Well, let's speak to Damilola Banjo, a journalist for BBC Pidgin, who was there at the Lekki Tollgate last night. She joins us live from Lagos. Welcome here to the programme. Why don't you start by just describing what it was like there when the shooting started, what you actually saw and heard?
Yesterday I was on the protest ground, and I was doing live stream for the Pidgin service when the soldiers came in. At that point, the protesters were peaceful. They were holding high their flags and their placards and chanting "NSAS, NSAS." And so when the military men came in, they started shooting instantly, sporadically into the air. And what the coordinators of the protesters then asked the protesters to do was to sit on the floor. The instruction was sit on the floor and just stay in one location. But of course, the sight of the military men got the protesters really angry and agitated. But still, they listened to the instruction given to them by their coordinator, which was to sit on the floor. And so they sat on the floor and they kept waving their flags and continued to chant their songs, their protest song, and continue to speak up and saying "NSAS, NSAS, NSAS." They were peaceful.
Let me ask you just a couple of observations from what you've just described, because there have been denials from the army about the shooting. Was it clear to you, you saw the army opening fire? And the second question, did you see any casualties, any bodies yourself?
Of course, I saw it wasn't just me at the protest ground. I had my editor with me, and we saw the army open fire on, of course, not on the protesters. They were shooting into the air at first. Before we left the scene, they were shooting into the air. And while we were trying to find a safe cover, I saw a young man who seemed to be struggling for breath. He was slipping out of consciousness and was just lying on the floor. I think what must have caused this situation at the time must have been the shock or the sudden shock of the sporadic shooting from the military, and of course, because the environment was tense, that must have been the cause of his predicament at that point. But yeah, that was the casualty I saw at the time. He was a young man lying on the floor, sleeping out of consciousness.
And for you and your colleague, I mean, I've read an account of how you had to crawl on your stomach for quite a while whilst the shooting was going on all around you. Give me an idea, I mean, how frightening was that?
Oh, it was so frightening. It was really terrible. The shooting continued for about 20 minutes, and we had to lay on our chest and try to move away from the crowd because of the high risk of stampede. And it was a very scary scene yesterday. My editor had to approach one of the soldiers to identify us as journalists before they allowed us a safe pass. But we could only do that after about 20-25 minutes of continuous shooting.
A final question then about how tense it is there today. I know you've been out and about in Lagos, and we were reporting earlier that there had been more shooting of police into the air as they tried to clear the streets, and you witnessed that, didn't you?
Yes. Earlier this morning at about a few minutes past 7, I was at Lekki Tollgate just to see what's left of the ruin that was done yesterday. And mobile police this time, they were shooting into the air continuously, and they were also harassing passers-by, and they wouldn't allow people pass through the toll gate. It was a very aggressive stand they had this morning. But it wasn't just at Lekki, because I also had to go to another part of Lagos because my friend was trapped somewhere in Yaba. And while I was going to get my friend. For about 40 minutes, I was trapped in between shooting and resistance from community boys in the area. For 40 minutes, I was around Yaba area of Lagos, and
yep.
the police kept shooting at sporadically, continuously for about 40 minutes.
Well, Damilola, we have to leave it there, but thanks for taking time and just describing what you've gone through over the last 24 hours. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.